I've been running my own small business for 5 years.
If you're new here, my name's Mutsa and I make and sell handcrafted pottery. I live in a little cottage in the woods and I'm trying to cultivate a slow life. I spend my days in my workshop turning lumps of clay into beautiful, functional pottery and running my small business, the Kindred Workshop. But 5 years ago, my life looked completely different, and I want to tell you the story of how I got here. You might want to grab a cup of tea for this story time. Let me take you back to 2020, a year that most of us would probably rather forget. Back before everything shut down, I was living in the city and working in a social media job for an organisation that I really cared about. But it had gotten to the point where I hated every second of being at work because of how I was being managed. There was no faith in my ability to grow and learn in this role. And if I'm being honest, it really crushed me. Mentally, emotionally, and creatively. It actually got to the point where I was literally crying every day because of how much anxiety going into work was causing me. And when I tried to vocalize these feelings, I was very swiftly shut down. And then came the Monday morning that I was on my train on the way into work when I spotted this email in my inbox. I was losing my job and there was no potentially about it. That was made very clear. At this point, I'd lost pretty much all confidence in myself and things were only about to get worse. A week later, our house was broken into and we were burgled. So many valuable things were stolen, including our only laptop, which kind of made job hunting that little bit more tricky. You know that meme with the dog in the house on fire? That was exactly how I felt at this point. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, this happened. I don't need to elaborate on this. We were all there. It's safe to say that at this point, my anxiety was through the roof, and I needed a distraction for the sake of my mental health. I think intuitively I knew that I needed something tactile to do with my hands in order to distract me and to just get that sense of mindfulness. So for some reason I decided to order a bag of air drying clay and make myself some earrings. I can't really remember what the inspiration or what the process was behind that decision, but I decided to do that. The one silver lining about the lockdown was how much time it gave me to truly slow down and create just for the sake of creating. I think as adults, we don't often make time to slow down and be creative just for the sake of it. The last time I remembered doing so was probably back in my childhood. I found this old folder at my parents' house from when I was about 9 years old and when I wanted to create my own fashion brand. It is unbelievably cringe, but I love how I had so much passion and self-belief back then. It makes me think that there was always a creative small business owner deep down inside that was just waiting for an opportunity as an adult. So I was making earrings and sharing a bunch of Insta stories and got some good feedback from some of my friends. There was one friend in particular who encouraged me to start selling my earrings, which, to be honest, was quite daunting at first. But Hannah, if you're watching this, thank you for your persistent encouragement, because I think without that, I probably wouldn't have had the boldness to try something new. For some reason, Etsy seemed a bit too serious for my little lockdown hobby. So instead, I decided to start a new Instagram page, make a batch of earrings in the hope that maybe at least some of them would sell. And at the very least, it was a way to occupy my time in the seemingly endless, monotonous days of the lockdown. So I made a batch of earrings and then came to the realization that I had to think of a name for what this new Instagram account was going to be. And again, I really can't remember what the process was behind it, but the word Kindred just came to mind. A few days later, I asked Dan to design me a little calligraphy logo, which he did an amazing job of. And then it was time to launch my little Instagram earring page. And much to my surprise, all of the earrings sold out. I was genuinely mind blown that people actually wanted to buy something that I'd made with my own two hands. And it brought me so much joy. So I kept making them and I kept going. One thing led to another and my lockdown hobby started to become a small business, which was never really the intention, but I was loving it. One of my first pinch me moments was when one of my favourite pairs of earrings ended up being worn on the front cover of a magazine. I remember going to the supermarket with my mask on and searching through all of the magazines to find the one with my earrings on, and that was a pretty incredible moment. At this point, it felt like I was finally starting to crawl out of that rock bottom hole that I'd been in, and it was so healing getting to spend my days doing something tactile and creative and getting to actually share those creations with other people. It was a weirdly special time that I will never forget. I knew nothing about running a small business, and it was a steep learning curve. Lots of late nights spent researching things and problem solving and getting so many things wrong and having to pick myself up and just keep going. But the business kept growing and evolving, and in hindsight, so did I. I started to feel like my creativity had really come alive again as I was exercising that artist muscle, and all of this led to me deciding to take a weekly pottery class. In this pottery class, I was definitely not a natural. It felt like it was taking me forever to get to grips with the basics of things like centering and getting the walls of pots straight, but I was enjoying it. I was enjoying just opening up a new part of my brain. And again, I feel like as adults, we don't often have the time or make the time to learn something new, learn something creative. It kind of felt like I was back doing A-level art at school, and I think it was really good for me. I remember the day that I threw the first pot that I was actually happy with. It was tiny and so chunky, but the walls were finally straight and I was really happy about it. And then I decided to start making mugs, and I actually have one of my first mug creations here with me. It's really wonky, the handle is horrible, but I cannot tell you how excited and ecstatic I was when this emerged from the kiln. So for some reason, I've always been a bit obsessed with mugs, to the point where, as part of my wedding vows to Dan, I actually vowed to try not to buy too many mugs. So it was really only a matter of time till I found a loophole, and I never said I wasn't going to make a load of mugs. And so I decided to dive headfirst, buy my own wheel, and make my first tiny batch of mugs. They were all a little wonky and mismatched, but very special to me nonetheless. There was definitely a lot of imposter syndrome for me in it at this point, but I decided to just step out and go for it and sell my first small batch of ceramics. And the pottery side of the Kindred Workshop was born. At this time, I was still making and selling earrings on a made-to-order basis, but I was juggling it with practicing this new craft and attempting to grow this new side of my small business. When I put my first tiny batch of mugs up for sale, much to my absolute surprise, they all sold out within the first week. So I kept going, growing and evolving as a ceramicist. I don't know if you've heard of the gap, but it's this concept that when an artist first begins to create something, there's always this big gap between their taste and their vision and their actual skill level. I resonate with this so much as someone who has a pretty strong sense of vision and a pretty strong idea of where I want to be and what I want to create, whilst constantly feeling like I'm in the gap trying to get to the other side. And I don't know if we ever really close the gap, but I've learned to enjoy the journey of slowly creating things that align more and more with what I love. On this pottery journey, I realised that I'm most deeply inspired by time spent in nature. Making time to retreat back to nature has been such a big part of my creative process. Earlier this year, we went on a Lake District adventure that left us feeling so inspired. We spent a few nights away at the Woodshed, the dreamiest little cabin nestled between the trees in Cumbria. It was such a tranquil place to slow down and disconnect from digital life, and we loved their ethos of using 100% green energy. They even had a beautiful new sauna too. Sauna with a view of the woods. It honestly couldn't get more dreamy. Hope Hill Lodges are very kindly offering 15% off a stay if you book using the code Kindred15. For more info, check the description below. It was also the perfect base for us to go out and explore the beauty of the Lake District. Nature's inspiration made its way into my pottery in a very literal sense when I started experimenting with foraging for wild clay. In many ways it's so simple, but for me truly mind-blowing and amazing getting to dig something straight from the earth and watch it transform into something beautiful and functional. I also started experimenting with turning rocks found on road trips and adventures into natural pigment glazes. If me 5 years ago could see me now, I think she would be in complete disbelief. This was never in the plan. I studied media and communications at uni, not pottery, not fine art, but here I am, and I honestly wouldn't change anything. Back when I was at my lowest, I couldn't really see how I'd find a way to actually make money from being creative or doing something that I actually really wanted to do. And I'm so glad that I've persisted and really gone for it all of these years, because I now do something that I can say I truly love, and that is a huge privilege. I'm really thankful. And I'm really excited to see what the next 5 years hold. Who knows?